Good morning, our audience. Good afternoon, our audience, and welcome. We'll be doing the symposiums in the morning, and you can tell that's why I'm thinking it's still the morning. But I'm sure it's morning for some of our customers up in the diaspora, majority of you. This is very early morning, and welcome. Thank you very much for joining us today. And like we've said, this is a follow-up to opening of our hub, which we did on Friday. And we are having this property symposium just to interact, run more, and share with each other. So as is our tradition at this point in time, allow me to open our function with a prayer, and then we can progress from there. So Anne, please welcome.
Thank you, Chris. Let us pray. Dear Lord, we thank you for this day. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for giving us an opportunity once again to have our symposium for the day. We pray that you're going to be with all the people who have joined us. Help us, Father, that we may have a positive impact in their lives and even in all the investment decisions they'll be making in the future. May the bank of their choice, Father, and may we be able to also offer them the best services. Be with us throughout this session. Help us that we may have an interactive session that is going to benefit each and every one of us, and we can learn from each and every other person who is participating here. We thank you and we give you all glory and honor. In the name of Jesus Christ, we pray and believe. Amen.
Thank you very much, Anne. Thank you for that. Our audience, welcome. Let me have an overview of who Cooperative Bank is. Cooperative Bank has got 6 subsidiaries. That is, there is Coop Bank, there is Kingdom Securities, Coop Bank of South Sudan, there is Coop Consultancy, Kingdom Bank, and Coop Trust Investment Services. We also have the 3 key divisions that manage customers and customer relationship. That is corporate, government, and institutional banking. We have retail banking, business banking, and cooperatives division. Coop Bank currently is the 3rd biggest commercial bank in Kenya with an asset base of 513.9 billion and a profitability of 20.7 in 2019. The share capital is over 65 billion. Our customer base is 8.8 million and a unique linkage to over 22,000 cooperative societies. The bank is anchored with over 15 million members from the cooperative movement, which is the largest in Africa. Currently, Coop Bank has a footprint of 159 branches, over 584 ATMs, and 17,800 agents, or what we call Coop kwa Jirani agents, all spread across the counties. The bank endeavors to deliver housing solutions to all our customers. I think especially in this space is to try and create solutions that are both relevant and convenient for our customers. At this point in time, let me give you an overview of what to expect in our talk today and how it has been. We've had an opportunity to introduce to you, our audience, e-selling, that is selling of properties, and you'll hear more about it. Basically, looking at the times and the challenges we've had with the pandemic, there's a need to become more innovative in how we sell properties. So virtual tours and e-selling, I think, is something that you are going to have going forward, and you'll hear more about that from Patrick. I think the next thing is affordable housing. And we have had a big talk and how to get a house, especially based on the affordable housing. The biggest thing about here is that the government has also invested heavily in terms of both the resources, the manpower, the research, infrastructure, and registration. And this has enabled quite a number of players to come into this sector. This, of course, means that we can afford houses to the lower end. I think the biggest talk we've had here is that then how do we take advantage? How do we walk to this journey? And I think a good number of our audience today who are actually from the diaspora I think this is your time. We have a very interesting topic, and that is looking up to the people in the diaspora, and is saying buying a home in the diaspora. I think you'll hear much of that. One of the biggest challenges we have seen in getting a home, especially somebody in the diaspora, is that all odds could be against you in terms of acquiring an asset. The process, talk about the time, how do you choose the partners, how do you get the power of attorney, how do you know who to trust, how do you ensure that you get what you are looking for? And all that will be within the talk today, and the team that will be talking has got a lot to share in that. So please walk with them and hear. I think the other thing that will come in is that how do you manage your property? I think the biggest issue is that when you buy a property and you put a property on a 15-year facility, then it means that you must maintain your property for the 15 years if you're going to yield any value. I think the critical bit that comes into is that you must be able to get a good manager, somebody who is able to deliver. So at this point in time, these are the kind of solutions that we put together. And around me to show you how the events were last week when we opened the hub, and we'll show by a video clip. But I'll share with you, our audience, that if you have any question, if you have any comment, something that you want to share across, feel free and go to the chat and share with us. And again, we have a team that is sitting, and Patrick will be able to assist you. So thank you very much and most welcome.
The Good Hope Mortgage Property Hub is officially open.
So thank you, Chris. Thank you, Chris, for that introduction. And good afternoon, everybody, for tuning in, for listening in. As introduced, my name is Patrick Masharia, also in the mortgage department at Cooperative Bank. And before I begin, I would want to still encourage us, for those who've tuned in, both in the country and outside, that you can leave your comments on the chat, even as we commence, even as we begin, even as we proceed. You can leave your chat indicating your name, location, and the message to the bank, and we shall get back to you. You can also see the available property solutions on goodhome.co.ke, or call us on 0711 049 739 or 0711 049 696. I'll be taking us through selling and buying of properties during the pandemic. And as we begin, I would want us to contemplate on what is currently happening, because a lot has happened over the last 6-8 months in the country, in view of the pandemic that has struck the country. We've seen this change the way we interact, and as a result, and compared to how it was initially, you'll realize that people are no longer meeting one-on-one. We no longer have the one-on-one engagements, and people are now resolving to online engagements and online meetings. This is actually experienced even in the workplace, where as opposed to the eyeball meetings we used to have initially, we are now relying on online meetings in a bid to observe physical and social distancing. Now, in effect, you'll agree that this has brought in a cost in the way we've been operating, because businesses now are forced to invest in such applications or equipment that would support online engagements. Now, as a result of this disruption, you realize that online platforms are taking center stage, because people who are selling properties are now marketing and selling their properties through virtual platforms. And you'll see property portals taking center stage. And again, with regard to the people who sell properties, you'll realize that they are now more than ever relying on virtual tours to market and display their properties. As opposed to taking customers to site, they are now relying on virtual tours to display whatever it is they are selling. And also on the different social media platforms that we have, you get in and you'll realize that we have quite a number of properties being marketed there. As I had promised yesterday, today we'll also be hearing about management of properties, and tomorrow as well we'll get to hear about digital rental collection. And you realize these are things that are taking center stage in view of the current situation and what people are now adopting. Now, looking at the disruption and also the online platforms that are being used, you'll appreciate that the demand for properties is also changing in a unique way, because we are seeing an increase in demand for housing units that fall within the affordable housing space. And there's also more demand for standalone units, as we saw yesterday, as well as land. Now, the peculiar thing with the land is that people coming in to buy land are either buying for speculation, where they'll sell this land at a later time to earn capital gains out of the same. It's a trend we are observing, and I know Purity will also be coming in to advise us on how to go about the process of acquiring property. The other interesting phenomenon around the market demand for properties is the fact that SACCOs are also forced to reckon with regard to investments in properties, because we are seeing SACCOs being a key to affordable housing, where people come together in organized groups and being able to forge the affordable housing agenda much easily. Now, my colleague will also be talking about management of properties, and this will also be a key topic, particularly for those who are getting into the property for purposes of earning an income out of it. Now, some of the properties that we are looking at, and the properties we'll be focusing on this afternoon, will fall within the residential space. And these are properties that are in areas such as Ngong, Mombasa Road, Limuru Road, Kitengela, Ongata Rongai, Kiserian, and the likes. And these are areas where land is deemed to be quite affordable in view of the demand. We're also looking at commercial properties, which include offices, residential blocks, as well as serviced apartments. And as other presenters will be talking about this, it will be interesting for us to note the trends in these areas. And as I had mentioned earlier, we also have a key interest in land, and this is land in different areas such as Kajiado, Nanyuki, Kiambu, Murang'a, Nakuru counties, to mention just but a few. Now, some of the properties, if I may mention in passing, some of the properties that are available, and I know Purity will be taking us the process of acquiring, these include apartments in Syokimau, apartments in Ruaka, apartments in Vipingo area along the coast, apartments at Sabaki of Mombasa Road, and these are properties that range from 1.5 million shillings all the way to 9 million shillings a piece. We also have properties, we also have apartments for sale along Ngong Road, in Sabaki area, in Ngong Town, Molem area, and these are properties that range from 2.65 million all the way to 6 million shillings a piece. We also have properties, residential units for sale. These are standalone units. We have properties, we have maisonettes in Kitengela, bungalows in Vipingo along the coast. We also have bungalows in Kitengela and maisonettes along Mombasa Road, properties that range in price from 4.5 million all the way to 16 million shillings a unit. Another interesting thing to note about these properties is that we also have commercial properties for sale. These would appeal to professionals in need of office space, as well as investors who are looking at properties that they're able to buy and earn a monthly rental income out of these. We have office space in Westlands. We have commercial buildings outside Nairobi, like what we have in Nyeri, a block of apartments in Kahawendani, and an interesting concept that we'll also be looking into will be that of serviced apartments, such as what we have in Lavington area of Nairobi. Now, these properties range in price from 54 million shillings all the way to 675 million shillings a unit. On the land, we also have residential plots, and these are plots that are subdivided into either eighths or quarters, or depending on the kind of property you require based on your unique need. And these range from what we have in Tuala, Rongai, Kitengela, also close to the road, Matasia in Merisho area, as well as Thika. Now, over the next few seconds, I would want to take us through some of the properties we have. We have a brief clip, like what is currently playing is Blue Anemone, and this property is in Ruaka, approximately 200 meters off Limuru Road, and it entails 2 and 3 bedroom apartments. And each apartment comes complete with a fitted kitchen, spacious lounge and laundry area, while the external amenities include perimeter walling, curb paved parking, ample water storage, among others. The development is nearing completion, and the 2-bedroom apartment is currently selling for 9 million, with potential to earn 45,000 shillings in rent. The 3-bedroom duplex apartment, which is also a favorite with many, is going for 13 million, with potential to earn 60,000 in rent. There's also Racecourse Gardens. And Racecourse Gardens is an interesting concept which has been done off Ngong Road. And what we note about this project is that it's been done complete with a swimming pool, children's play area, large central garden, commercial area, kindergarten, ample parking with tarmacked driveways, a borehole, and ample water storage facilities. As you'll note, it's also close to the road at only 300 meters off Ngong Road, and these are studios, 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. The development is ready for occupation, and the studio apartments, which measure 25 square meters, are currently selling for 3.5 million, with potential to earn 25,000 shillings in rent. The standard 1-bedroom, which measures 37 square meters, is currently selling for 4.8 million, with potential to earn 35,000 in rent, while the deluxe 1-bedroom, which measures 40 square meters, is currently selling for 5 million, with potential to earn 38,000 shillings a month in rent. The 2-bedroom apartment, which measures 72 square meters, is going for 8 million, with potential to earn 45,000 shillings in rent. Important to note, and I know Purity will also be talking to this, is the fact that the bank is also ready to finance this. So if you identify a unit, if you see something that is catchy or something that meets your needs, your investment needs, feel free to reach through to us on the numbers we had given earlier, or to leave a message on goodhome.co.ke. Now, as we prepare, I'll want to invite Purity. And Purity will be taking us through an interesting concept. And I'll ask us to keep chatting and leaving our comments, even as we get ready to listen to Purity. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. And as promised, the next speaker will be taking us through an equally interesting topic, which is buying property while in the diaspora. And the speaker for that particular topic is none other than Purity Gashoki. And as Purity settles in, I would want to ask her a question which is in line with the topic that she's taking us through. And Purity, maybe as you start, you'd want to advise us on the different categories of properties that are available in Kenya today, looking at the different counties. Maybe you could advise in line with the topic for the day. Welcome, Purity, even as we look forward to hearing from you.
Okay, thank you so much, Patrick, and thank you our audience, our listeners, for tuning in, especially those tuning in from the diaspora. You're welcome to listen to this insightful session. To respond to Patrick's question, we have a variety of properties that you in the diaspora, as well as those living in Kenya, can invest in. Those include properties that are commercial in nature. Those are properties that you can buy and can generate income for you. We have residential properties. These are properties that you can buy and live in, or you can buy and also decide to settle in or rent out to in a domestic sort of nature. We also have land that is also available that you can also buy into, both agricultural and commercial land. So throughout the country, in the areas of Nairobi, the areas of Nairobi Metropolis, Eldoret, Mombasa, Thika, and various parts of the country, you can get these properties. So thank you for this opportunity. As Patrick has introduced me, my name is Purity Gashoki, and I'll be glad to be taking you through this session where we'll be discussing about buying a property while in the diaspora. I want to once again thank the people who are tuning in from the diaspora. You can see quite a number of you. And just to note that there are over 3 million Kenyans who are living in the diaspora. And when you say diaspora, we are not limited to areas within the United States of America, Europe, United Arab Emirates, and other countries. Anyone that is living outside the country. And these are people who have greatly contributed to the growth of the Kenyan economy, and thus even the government takes these people living in the diaspora seriously. So we as Coop Bank are coming here to give you solutions within the real estate fraternity. And today we are going to be discussing buying properties while you're out there living in the diaspora, buying property within the country, Kenya. Over the past 10 plus years, we've seen an upward trend in the real estate markets. Most value in properties have been almost doubling and some even tripling, especially those in the commercial areas. With that, it has also brought the appetite of those living in the diaspora to come up and want to own a piece of their country, just want to own something that some who may want to retire in the country can come back and settle into something. With that need has created challenges. And these are the challenges that we as Coop Bank are looking to give solutions to. Some of the challenges have been not limited to fraudulent property transactions perpetrated by unscrupulous property sellers, people who pretend to be selling genuine properties, but at the end of it, you find that they are not as genuine as we may know. So those are some of the challenges. And with a few tips that we are going to give, we'll just give you a way forward on how to go about when buying a property. So just a recap, a summary of what we'll be discussing during this session. One of the most important things is to identify a reputable real estate firm. We'll also talk about research on the property price and value. We're also going to talk about identifying a reputable financier. We'll also talk about your personal representatives. We know that most of you in the diaspora have family and friends back home who act as your personal representatives, so we'll be talking about that. We're also going to talk about engaging a legal team or a lawyer who is competent to carry out transactions on your behalf. When identifying a reputable real estate firm, as we know, and as most of you clients have experienced, while buying a property when you're not around, when you're in diaspora, it may be a risky venture, especially while buying through an individual. Some of the reasons that buying from an individual may prove to be a risky venture, number one is the issue of trust. The issue of trust that may also the issue of trust, my apologies, the issue of trust that may hinder the transaction. You may find some people who are not genuine in their transactions. There's the issue of documentation, there's the issue of due diligence. So some of the considerations that you may take as a customer in the diaspora while identifying a reputable real estate firm. Number one is the client feedback. Nowadays, as we know, the world has become a global village. Everything is online. Everything is on social media platforms. There's a lot of technology going around. You can get a lot of client feedback, even in the public domain. So when identifying a real estate firm, we can go online and just check what are clients talking about this real estate firm. This is where Cooperative Bank has introduced the Property Hub. The Property Hub is a one-stop shop where you, as the client, will get all your property solutions sorted out. This will give you comfort. It will give you comfort that you're going to continue with the transactions as you had planned. It will give you comfort that you're dealing with a reputable real estate firm, being that Cooperative Bank has been in the market for a really long time. And that is one of the things that you will know. Number two, as you're identifying the real estate firm, just look at the number of the successful projects that the company has undertaken. You will see the track record of the properties that the company has developed. You will see a track record of completed projects. You will see a track record of all the engagements that the company has had in the market. That will tell you that the company is reputable. The other important thing to look at is also the directorship and the ownership of the specific real estate firm. Something to note is that it is always advisable not to look at individually owned real estate firms. For this reason is that you may not be able to differentiate between the company and the firm. So in that situation, this is where now Cooperative Bank once again has brought the Property Hub, where we know the directorship, we know the ownership of the company, and in this case, we know that there's confidence when you're buying a property through the Property Hub. There's also the issue of listing with the institutions such as the Nairobi Stock Exchange. It is always advisable to go through a company that has been listed. Why is this? This is because there is a lot of regulation that goes around it, and this will ensure that your money is safe. It will ensure that you do not fall into the hands of unscrupulous sellers. While purchasing land, one of the things to note is the track record of issuance of title deeds. We know that title deeds have been very elusive in this country, but we as Cooperative Bank have curbed that by ensuring that we take the end-to-end process of processing of titles for our clients. And as you do research on the title deeds, just check the track record of how the company has been issuing titles to their clients. Number two, as we continue, the other thing to look at while buying a property is to research on the property price and value. Why do we need to research? We know that Kenya has been very dynamic in real estate as a result of so many factors that have come in the past 10, 15 years. Some of the reasons why we may say that is because there's been a lot of improved infrastructure. There's been a lot of growth of social amenities. We've had most people access financing to buy properties, and this has really changed the value of the properties that we are talking about. So when you're in the diaspora, you need to make sure that the price you would want to buy a property is the correct market price. By this, you ensure that you will not be duped. You will not pay the price that is over and above the market price. It means that you will also get properties that are not overpriced. Some properties are, of course, they are well priced, but we know that some are obviously underpriced. But one thing to note is that the social media, the technology, has brought a lot of information just by the click of a button. You're able to get a lot of information. For example, if you'd want to buy a property in Kitengela, you would only need to search on Google or on any social media platform, and you'll be able to tell how much a property is going for in the areas of Kitengela, how much a property is going for in the areas of Ngong. And by that, you'll be able to get the market rate. The other thing while getting the property price and value is also engage professionals. We as Cooperative Bank have a group of professionals that includes valuers, includes a vast legal team that can also help you to get the value, the real value of the property. We also have a team of knowledge staff that can also take you through the current market trends, that can also tell you what to expect in a certain area, whether to tell you if your expectations are within in a certain area, if your expectations are below the market. We have a team of professionals that can take you through that. When particularly when taking financing for a mortgage, the property value is very important. And that is where we, as Cooperative Bank, as the property hub, we come in to just ensure that you get the correct value for a property that you intend to purchase. The third consideration while buying a property, identify a reputable financier. While sourcing for a financier in the market, this is a very important thing. How does a financier come in? A financier comes in three fronts. Number one is to give you the mortgage. Number two is to carry out due diligence on the property. Number three, there's professional assistance from a real estate reputable financier. In this case, we are talking about the Cooperative Bank. The Cooperative Bank, especially mortgage, has been in the market for over 13 years, and we are confident that we have given mortgages to thousands and thousands of clients. And in this case, we are your best mortgage financial partner. And while choosing a financial partner, you will choose us because we will do proper due diligence on the property that we are talking about, especially during mortgage of the property. When doing due diligence, we consider that the property is of the correct market value, that the property is in a good condition, that the property that you're buying is in good conditions. It is free from any legal or any issue, any encumbrances. It is free from that. We also ensure that the property is also free from any outstanding rents. That is in the case of land, in any outstanding rent and rates, any outstanding charges on the land. We are able to find out that. And there are other things that come up, especially bills that are affiliated to the property. We may find that some properties have pending water and electricity bills. This is where the professionals with the bank, such as Coop Bank, will give you value. There is the mortgage processing, whereby we are able to process the mortgage for you, where you would want to be financed. We finance up to 80% of the property value. And in this case, we have proven to be a reliable financial partner, especially with clients in the diaspora. And in this case, we have been able to eliminate numerous cases that are related to property fraud, especially assisting clients who are in the diaspora to achieve their dream of owning a home within the country. Our main important concern as a bank is to ensure that we safeguard you as the client from any issue that may arise in regards to the property that you intend to purchase. We also have professionals in the staff. As I had mentioned earlier, we have staff who are ready to take you through from the value of the property to assisting you identify a suitable property according to your need, according to your budget. We assist you, take you through that specific process. And it is important to have such professionals so that you can have a seamless flow of transactions as you purpose to purchase a property in Kenya. The other consideration is having a personal representative. We are in the age of technology, as we have mentioned earlier, and as the mentionings are coming, we know that nowadays we do virtual viewings of properties, but in some situations, you living in the diaspora may want a representative who is living here. It could be your spouse, it could be your friend, it could be your parent, just to come and do a physical inspection of the property, to do a physical viewing of the property, just to ensure that what you hear is what you're getting. And one thing that is important, since you may not get an opportunity to physically visit the property or countercheck any information that you're given by us, it is important to have that representative who will go do a physical check on the property and just give you a report on the state of the property. It is also advisable to get someone who is reliable, trusted. Sometimes trust may bring issues, but it is important to get someone who is trusted to view and verify the property. The other issue with the personal representative, they will be assisting you in the mortgage process facilitation. And this is where you give your personal representative the power of attorney. This means that the person will be able to act on your behalf and to sign some documents on your behalf during the process of mortgage, during the process of acquiring the property and transferring of the same property to your name. The same representative who has the power of attorney will also be assisting you in the mortgage application, as our team of professionals engage you in the processing of the mortgage, as our team of professionals also engage you in the viewing and all processes pertaining the mortgage application. Your personal representative will also be part of the process. They will also be keeping you abreast of everything that is ongoing in the mortgage process up until the documents are transferred successfully, and even after. Last but not least, one very critical thing to consider while buying a property while you're in the diaspora is to engage a competent lawyer, advocate who will act on your behalf in execution of some of the important items during the property purchase process. The services of a legal expert are critical in driving the entire process to completion, and it is also important so that all the processes are taken through within reasonable time. Some of the processes that a legal expert will come in handy is, number one, we'll review the sales agreement. By reviewing the sales agreement, it means that they will assist you to ensure that the sales agreement has interpretation of the clauses, and also to ensure that you do not sign up to clauses that are, say, punitive or may not favor you or may be skewed towards either party. Those are services of the lawyer. They will interpret each and every clause in every sales agreement to the satisfaction of you as the client. There is also the procurement of consents that are required. That is especially the spousal consent, especially when taking up a mortgage, and also during the transfer while going to the Lands Controls Board. That is during the transfer of land. The legal expert will help you to go through the process of getting the consents, as well as making that process smooth for you. The other thing is that the legal expert or the lawyer will also assist you in the administration of government fees. We know that for any property purchase to come to completion, there are government fees that must be paid and that are mandatory. So those may include stamp duty and other taxes that are charged on the property, and a legal expert will come in handy in the administration and the paying of such fees. The last but not least one of the most important reasons why we need to engage a competent lawyer is in the transfer of the property. That is the transfer and registration of the property, which is the final bit while purchasing a property. The lawyer will ensure that all the processes that are involved in the transfer of a property are done to precision, that no single step is skipped while doing the transfer, that all the registrations all the titles are registered at the lands registry and in all the relevant offices, especially in cases of houses, apartments, and also commercial buildings. We to notice that while transferring property, the process of transfer is critical and it has to be followed step by step. With this, and that is where the lawyer comes in very handy to ensure that no step is skipped, and also to ensure that the process comes to completion and all the registrations are done. The other thing is also to ensure that in case there is a charge that is done, that in case of you're buying the property through mortgage, the charge is done and is completed and the documents submitted to the financial institution. I trust that with those 5 pointers we have had a fruitful engagement. I also encourage those who are tuned in to go to the chat and just drop in your questions, and we'll be ready to answer. As we continue, I would like to give this opportunity to Patrick to just come and tell us 1 or 2 things. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Purity. I think as of now, based on what you've told us, based on the topic you've taken us through, buying property while in the diaspora, that's very insightful. And I think those are key pointers, particularly to people who are attempting to invest in property. Now, following from Purity's presentation, I think one thing that stood out for me is that as an investor, you don't want to be duped, you don't want to be cheated by unscrupulous property sellers. And that is why Cooperative Bank has introduced the Good Home Mortgage Property Hub, where you will be able to access clean properties and other real estate solutions, including mortgage financing for these properties. Visit goodhome.co.ke or call 0711 049739 or 0711 049 696 for more information on these properties and mortgage financing. Ladies and gentlemen, as promised, our next speaker will also be taking us through an equally important topic, because in line with what the previous speakers have told us about buying the properties during pandemic, buying a property while in the diaspora, the next speaker is going to take us through the next phase. Now that you've bought a property, what happens next? How do you manage this property so that you get the most out of this particular investment? Now, the next speaker taking us through the topic, efficient management of properties, is none other than Hilda Njoroge. Hilda has a wealth of experience in that field, and I'll keep encouraging us to keep chatting. Thank you, Tobias. We are seeing you from Doha, Qatar. We've seen your question. There's Moneki from Donholm, Arail from Nyali, Victor from Salt Lake City. We'll respond to all these questions in due course, but first, let's listen to Hilda, who will take us through that equally important topic. But Hilda, as you settle down, you would want to respond to a query which our customers have been asking from time to time. And basically, this is also a question on trends. So what are the current trends in the rental, property, and management space in Kenya? Hilda, welcome, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you, Patrick, for that question. Ideally, what we are seeing in terms of trends, in terms of property management and rental collection, is that obviously the current situation, the pandemic, has actually pushed a lot of people to go virtual, and to also ensure that there's documentation and that they're also able to track rental payments and even how their properties are doing from an off-site position. So gone are the days where property management can only be done face-to-face, and that I actually have to keep going to the property. Well, there's an element of that. Ideally, that has really pushed a lot of landlords to start seeing the benefits of putting in systems, and to also getting credible people to ensure that the properties are actually being managed appropriately. So with that, as you've been introduced by Patrick, my name is Hilda Njoroge. I'll actually be taking you through the efficient management of properties. more so during this period of COVID-19. However, I would like to believe that managing properties efficiently goes beyond the pandemic. It's a pre and post-pandemic sort of situation. I believe when you have invested, the millions and billions that you've put into this investment called property, ideally what this means is that, you've taken time, and this is a heavy investment. So it means that just the same way when you buy something of value, you must be able to take care of it. And a lot of us usually take for granted that, property management is just rental collection. And today I would like to just demystify that and to just give you some pillars that we look at when we really think about efficiently managing your properties. So the situation currently has generally obviously sort of accelerated, as I was saying before, accelerated the efficient management of property, and also making sure that people actually don't require face-to-face engagement, especially between landlords, agents, and tenants. So now we'll start by saying, obviously, property management, simply put, is really just the art of preserving the asset. It's an art. So what you do is simply just preserving the asset quality. So there's nothing extravagant that you're doing. You've already bought the property, you've already gotten your documentation, the property is yours as a landlord. So right now that you have it, you need to make sure that you're simply making sure that that investment is being maintained and being preserved in a sustainable manner over a long period of time. And ideally what we say, good property management will actually increase your property value and worth, and by retaining, and this is not necessarily by increasing, not capital appreciation per se, but what it will do is that it will help you to retain value and also add value onto your property. And this means that ideally what happens is that your value is optimized over a long period of time and sustainable. And this property management could easily be done by the landlord themselves. We do have landlords who believe, come from the school of thought that I must be there so that my property can be managed well. And there is also other landlords who may not be, especially for the diaspora clients, who are actually not within, they're not available at the moment. They're not in the country, so they're not able to manage their properties themselves. So what they do is that they actually contract an agent. So fear not, it can be done both ways. It can be done by the landlord or by a contracted property agent. And this will also largely depend on the landlord themselves. It will also depend on the size of the property. If you have for argument's sake, you have 10 block of flats, you may not be able to manage them all at the same time. And for example, that property may be an investment that you're doing on the side. Maybe you have a day job, maybe you're a lawyer, maybe you're in another service industry. So what it means is that this property is an investment that is, it's a passive investment. You collect your rent and life moves on. So it means that even though you're still within the proximity, you may still require the services of an agent, and also to help you, avoid the running around. Maybe you have a property in Juja, you have another one in Kitengela, you have another one in Athi River, you have another one in Eldoret. It's actually impossible to be everywhere at the same time. So I'll walk you through the around 7 pillars. Ideally, these are not limited, they're just generally summarized, just to give you a flavor and an overview of ideally what we mean when we talk about efficient property management. So the first one I will talk about is contracts. So this is specifically legal contracts. And then we'll talk about revenue collection, we'll talk about records management, we'll talk about communication, we'll talk about operations and maintenance, we'll talk about inspection and oversight, and we'll also talk about accounting systems. So to start us off, we'll start with contracts. So this specifically are legal contracts, and this is specifically for individual property. So as a landlord, you have to ask yourself, do your properties have a contract for that specific property, or are your contracts jumbled up? If I hire Kamau to do for me, property management, I hire him to, to do property management for 10 of my properties. You need to be able to have a contract in place for each property, and even for each specific tenant. You may have a tenant who's maybe has bought several of your properties, maybe a unit there, a unit there. So do your tenants have a specific, legal document, a tenant agreement for each specific property? So what this means is that as a landlord, you need to be able to secure your property, your interest of the property. You protect your interest as a landlord. So that means that all your contracts must be fully executed. And I don't mean, usually we put our contracts, we get the lawyer to draft the contract. Then maybe you forget to sign because, tenant has already entered and, is paying rent and life has moved on. So what happens is that in case there's an issue, your interest as a landlord is not protected. The tenant could come and say, no, we do not have an agreement, and it could cause a little bit, back and forth and discomfort, and even causing you to actually lose a tenant, who is actually a revenue stream for you as a landlord, and also creating a lot of unnecessary distress involving the issues surrounding the tenancy. So you need to make sure that all contracts, even if it's with your property agent or the guy doing the security, they must be fully executed from both ends, and each of you keep a copy so that when that day comes, obviously we're not anticipating for that, but you must make sure that you're protected. The second thing, within this contract, you have to look at your lease agreements. Are your lease agreements in place with every tenant? Every tenant that comes to your premises, do they have a lease agreement in place? And are you screening your tenants? Have they provided proper documentation, and have they also provided you with identification of themselves that is valid? I'm talking about IDs, I'm talking about passports, etc. And your service providers. Ideally, primarily, this would include a property agent, number one, because this is the guy who's, making sure that you're managing your property on your behalf on site. You have security. These are some of the main contracts that you may have. You may have one of the security companies manning your property to just make sure it's secure. You have garbage collection. You have tenants. Maybe if you have a block of even 20, even 5 tenants, you still have to make sure that the trash is put out and collected. Is there some level of gardening? And obviously this differ between various properties. And then cleaning as well of the common areas. Are your common areas clean? When I come to your property as a landlord, is it clean? Is it habitable? Are the common areas where a tenant can walk through, the staircase, the back of the building, at the front, is it clean? So you may have somebody, even if it's not maybe a company, you may want to consider a company that maybe does. Usually what we've seen is that a company that may do garbage collection, gardening, and cleaning all at the same time. So that's probably one contract. But then again, that will also stand guided by the size of your property and even the location and even the amenities that you offer. And then one of the things we also would usually employ landlords to consider is to ensure that they put out, they have a service level agreement. And by this I mean, property managers generally and agents, whether or not the property is well maintained or looks good, so long as the tenants are paying rent, you may have very good paying tenants and you get your rent on time every month, but your property is deteriorating. So, you find an iron sheet falling there, the ceiling somehow, something is not okay. You find your perimeter wall is cracking, and they're not bothered. And why? Because, they're collecting. Usually the property agent agreements are, you pay me X% on the monthly rent. So we usually employ landlords to put some level of service level agreement. While yes, I pay you, percentage of the rent, that that the property manager will collect, there has to be some mechanics in place to ensure that you're monitoring performance, so that the property manager is motivated to go check on your property, to go inspect it, and to make sure that the other maintenance issues are actually being attended to. And then lastly, on contracts, you must be able, I appreciate that we may not all be lawyers and we may not have, any appreciation maybe for, legalese, especially when it comes to property. And what we do is that we'll hire a lawyer to do this. We usually advise landlords that you may not have that, but we employ them to try and at least get a basic understanding and knowledge of housing laws, in terms of building codes, how is that area, what is the Landlord and Tenancy Act, and also, some of the binding regulations, especially in the rent tribunal. Because what happens is that you may, get a stubborn tenant, or you may fall into a case merely not because on error on your part, but maybe because of a process that may not have been followed adequately, that may land you in court with a tenant. And I know, and I will tell you myself, I'm also not a lawyer. So these things you actually just learn as you go, and just maintain a basic understanding and knowledge, so that you're also able to engage with your lawyers, and also able to ensure that some of the things, when your lawyer is not present, you're able to keenly be conscious of the fact that this should not escalate into a legal matter. The next pillar we'll look at is revenue collection. So revenue collection, generally what this means is that revenue, we've broken it down into into 4 items. So you have your monthly rent, obviously, and you, as a landlord, is your rent competitive in terms of when you review it against market? Are you doing a regular rental reviews? Sometimes you may find you are charging 20K per month, for example. It may be, say, 2015. Times have changed. Your property is still in good condition, and maybe now you can charge maybe a bit, 25,000 per month. So has that been changed? Has that been changed as a landlord? So some of those things are good to continue checking, just to make sure that your revenue collection is at optimal. Security deposits. Do you have security deposits for all your tenants? Or do your tenants able to come into your property and they don't pay any security deposits? Which means that if one day they leave after a month or 2, you're stuck with repairs, you're stuck with unnecessary costs that you could have actually covered using their security deposit. Service charge. And service charge, I mean service charge for common areas. As a landlord, sometimes we've seen that some properties may not charge service charge, which means that I just pay my rent and that's it as a tenant. So what happens is that as a landlord, you shoulder the burden of security, because a tenant is paying you rent because they want to live in a secure property. Cleaning of the common areas, as I mentioned, gardening and garbage collection, and even, for example, if you have septic tanks, every year so often you need to have them disposed, and there's a cost to that. So who pays for that? So ideally, we advise a landlord charge a small service charge, and this is just an evaluation of your other general day-to-day maintenance of the property, and service charge is usually very defined. So you will not start charging tenants for maybe a crack on the wall. That's a structural issue. So that should be a landlord cost, and usually falls under capital expenses, which we shall see later. But for service charge, it's important to charge that so that it doesn't eat into your revenue. And then you must have a debt management policy. And I think this has really been very pronounced in this period, where we've seen a lot of distress, especially for our tenants, where they're not able to pay rent for one reason or the other, or there's an issue in terms of payment. So you want to be able to have a process, and a distress process, where you don't just wake up and kick your tenant out, but you have a distress process, because if that happens, the person may take you to the rent tribunal. So when they take you to the rent tribunal, what that means is that there will be a ruling, for example, until the case is resolved, the tenant does not pay rent. So for maybe a period of 6 months, and those are cases we've actually seen. So what that means is that, as a landlord, you lose out, and then you have a court case on your hands now. So we usually employ landlords to make sure you have a debt management policy, to make sure that your revenue collection is in check, and even what you're not able to collect, you have a process in which you're following to actually collect the revenue. Go to the next one, the next pillar, which is record management. So, for example, do you have a place where you've kept your records? Are they in hard or in soft? We usually employ landlords to ensure that they put, they have both hard and soft, preferably. Anything could happen. A building could burn down. It could flood. It could be vandalized, and these days, as we have just been seeing during this period, everything has gone virtual. So invest in making sure that your records are are stored in the cloud or in some way in soft copy form so that you're able to access. And with the magnitude of the investment that you've made in this, you need in a property, you need to make sure that you have the proper records to support it. Are you storing them off-site or on-site? Some landlords have an office within the property or a central office for all their investments. So you want to make sure that there's some level of storage. Somebody can access, your agent can access a file if a tenant comes with an issue or a tenant wants to vacate. And each property should have each separate individual file, and you should ensure that you have some level of a record system. And also you have your service provider contracts in place as well. You don't want to be asking, oh, who's the property manager? I don't know whether we had a contract. Who was doing the security? I'm not sure whether the contract, was updated. So you want to make sure that all those contracts are in a place where they can be accessed and can be verified and can be seen and are fully executed. And in terms of operations and maintenance files, we'll talk about maintenance, and you will see some of the issues that come up in terms of repairs and capital expenses. This needs to be documented, because sometimes you may find that you end up you keep on paying for something. So, and I'm sure most of you may have experienced this, where you keep correcting a problem on site every time, and it doesn't seem to get resolved. So and you may not be able to keep track of every payment. Maybe you pay a 5,000 there, 20,000 there, 100,000 there. So you just need to make sure that you're able to have those files in place, just to keep a record and to keep track, so that if there's anything that needs to be either to do an overhaul or renovated, then it is done, so that you don't keep incurring the same cost over and over. And records help you do that, other than word of mouth or trying to remember when it happened. And the last thing in this records management, you need to be able to, you need to have an archiving system. After maybe 3 to 5 years, you find yourself having put so much information together. And then, depending on the number of properties, depending on the size of the property, in terms of units, you could have thousands of units, hundreds of units, and you have many tenants. So you may need to think about an archiving system, where maybe after 3 to 5 years, you may think of disposing some files once a problem has been corrected. If you are fixing a crack on the wall for so long, and then you eventually demolished the wall and you renovated it and you put up another one, then with time after the repair period, to assess whether the repair was successful, then you could dispose of that file. So just to ensure that you're not having a lot of clutter around. So that's just some of the things that we employ landlords to think about in terms of record management. So we go to the next fourth pillar. As we're waiting for the fourth pillar to come up, I want to bring you back to, when we're talking about revenue collection. Revenue collection, we talked about monthly rent, talked about security deposits, talked about service charge for common areas, we talked about debt management policies. But the other thing I want to bring to your attention is that, do you have an accounting system? Have you thought about, having a timely, accurate, centralized and efficient system in place? And these are some of the things that we employ our landlords to do and to consider, especially if you've developed this beautiful property that you want to maintain. And this helps you to keep even your utility payments in check in terms of water, electricity, insurance, that you need to pay for your property. And then, payment of service providers, service providers already have a contract in place. So what that means is that if they have a contract in place, it means that obviously they are being paid every month. So you need to make sure that just the same way for those who are employed and who are also employers, you ensure that you're paid, and you also pay your employees on time. So you also need to make sure that there's a system where you're able to pay your service providers and also the people who are giving you services to your property, say like security, gardening, which could also be maybe you do gardening after every 3 months. So there has to be a system where you're able to track those payments. Maybe you pay them quarterly or half annually, etc. And then The other thing that we usually employ landlords to do is that sometimes we focus so much on collecting rent that we are not able to consider, we don't think about ideally how does our profit and loss statement looks like. And just to demystify that and not to use very heavy words, ideally this simply means what is your income versus your expenditure. So your income is the rent that you're collecting, and then expenditure items are items that you've actually expended. You've expended over the period of time. So this could be in terms of what you've paid your service providers, the bills that you've paid for the property, repairs and maintenance. You want to see what the bottom line, what is your net return. So it's important to be able to have this system in place, which allows you to get balance check. So you're always on the positive and you're ensuring that there are no rents anywhere. And also that that positive is growing the period, and at the very least is actually being maintained and you're not losing money. And this boils down to also making sure that your billings and collections are in place. Sometimes we look at billings, we think about just collecting rent. I may bill a tenant rent for a month, but maybe the person pays me half. So that means my collections are not matching to my billings. So, that's also a check, because somebody will say, oh, I've paid rent, and maybe they paid less, 5,000, less 10,000, or even less 2,000, which is not good. So what that means is that as a landlord, you need to have a check where you're able to make sure that your billings and collections are balancing. So this gives you a good, this system helps you to keep in check in terms of monthly, quarterly, annual balances, even the balances brought forward. Maybe someone says, especially like during this period, someone says, okay, maybe I got laid off, or maybe my income is not very stable, but I know my rent is 20K, but can I pay you 15? And then maybe the 5K, you can push it to the next month, and then we keep doing that. Then at some point, by maybe 6 months, I'll have cleared the balance as they keep on accruing. So that means that this billings and collection systems helps you to also keep track of those balances brought forward, and even the rent and service charge as well. And then also, they also, obviously, a few of the bad tenants that we get, they keep you, guessing, for the next 30 days, I'll pay you next month, 60 days, okay, 2 months are gone, okay, 90 days, wondering, should I kick them out? Should I not kick them out? And then another one, 20 days. That's 4 months. So, you need to have, when you have that accounting system, it helps you keep track of how your arrears have been aging on a month-to-month basis. So now you're able to, you start attacking the ones that, have taken so long to pay. We're talking about 3 months and going down all the way to 1 month, because maybe for one of your tenants, it could be just a slip, or maybe it could be a miscommunication, or maybe just a change in their current situation in terms of income levels. So, and they're not necessarily a bad tenant. So you may not want to just kick them out, because also that also brings a very bad rapport in terms of your property to even people who are as you're marketing. If you have vacancies, you're marketing your property. So you don't want your property to be scarred by a landlord who is always kicking people out, but should have a sense of a landlord who is very keen and keeps track of their tenants. Then we'll look at the next pillar, on the 5th pillar. So I'll skip through to the property maintenance operations that I mentioned. This basically, here we talk about repairs. So repairs generally could be, ad hoc or planned. It could either be, daily or routine. And then, and obviously these ones are, maybe there's a spoiled electrical fault here, maybe, something small, or maybe the daily ones that you have to keep checking. And then the routine ones, servicing. If you have a generator, you have to check on it. If you have a lift in your property, you need to service it, small things like that. And then you have your capital expenses. And capital expenses, we call them capital expenses because these ones are basically capitalized. So what that means is that you take them up as a landlord, and they are of value. Ideally, I know they're expenses, but they are of value, and this include insurance premiums. I don't know how many of you have insured your properties. It is important in this day and age. where we don't know what could happen. And I'm sure you're very familiar with terrorist attacks in Kenya, or even vandalism or even looting, things like those. So what happens is that if you do not have insurance in place, if your property gets damaged in any sort of way, what that means is that, okay, so it's damaged. That cost now becomes a proper landlord cost. Whereas had you been paying insurance, very regular with your insurance premiums, which are a fraction of what that damage would cost, the insurance would be able to take care of cost for you in a timely manner and make sure that the building is restored to even, if not the same state, but even better. And then we have things like legal fees. Legal fees is a cost that you incur as a landlord, and my colleagues have been talking about making sure that you're engaging a lawyer. Those costs are your costs. And then you have utilities, water for the common areas. The water for gardening is not the water that you charge your tenant. Your tenant pays as per the meter. The electricity that you pay for the security lights is not for the tenant. The tenant, tenant pays, their electricity, the one that they consume. So utilities, and you have your usual property taxes, and you also have some repairs, as I was mentioning, of a structural nature. And I keep using the wall, a wall example, because most of the time that's what we usually find. You find cracks on the wall. That's not a tenant cost, that is a landlord cost. And obviously that is a capital expense, because you're ideally restoring the property into a better state and ensuring the quality is maintained, because you do not want to have a property that is having cracked walls. That is just a gateway for a massive tenant exit, where they start looking for other options and leave your property. So in terms of maintenance, when you're not around and you're not next to your property or a place where you can access it, what this means is that now we've started to see that even these maintenance issues that we kept on saying, somebody has to go look at it. Yes, well, somebody must look at it. There is a way even for you as a landlord, even when you're away, especially for our diaspora clients. Those maintenance issues can be resolved online. Do you have a portal where they're able to log in their issues? They can send pictures, and this can now start to generate like a maintenance worksheet or a request online that you can be able to send to the agent or contractor or technician or for assessment and evaluation on site, because obviously some of these things we still cannot eliminate completely face to face, but does not mean that we also cannot monitor them even when we're away. When we go to the next pillar, and keep sending in your questions, even as I'm presenting, just to make sure that, if there's any question, any burning question. I know most of you have, properties, all over the country. Just keep your questions coming and we will be happy to answer them. So the next one is inspection and oversight. This basically speaks to, are your properties being regularly inspected? And we always want to encourage landlords to make sure that your properties are regularly inspected, and you also have some level of impromptu-ness, where you just all of a sudden show up on your property unannounced, so that you also get to see what ideally happens when you're not around. And even for the ones who are not able to do that, I'm sure there are times when you're able to travel back to your home country, and sometimes it's good not to say when if you're going to be passing through the property, so that you also just pass through and see how it is doing. Get a trusted family member to just suddenly show up at very odd times. If you usually show up at lunchtime, next time you make sure you show up first thing in the morning or at 9 a.m. Another time, make sure you're there at, maybe 5, 6 p.m. when the guards are maybe changing, for the night guard, just to keep them guessing, and to just make sure that a lot of these things are the control and the controls that you put in place, and everybody is actually doing what they're supposed to be doing, and responsibility is being carried out by the people that have been assigned to it. And then also, oversight helps you to make sure that there is a clear demarcation of roles. If you have a property agent, as we talked before about contracts and making sure that you have a proper SLA, which is a service level agreement with your property agent, make sure that the roles are very demarcated. a landlord versus agent, so that you don't have a scenario where your agent is telling you, no, that is for the landlord, you know, and then the landlord even themselves are maybe are not even sure, am I the one to do this or the agent? Or you find yourself doing a lot of agency work, and yet you have hired somebody who you're paying on a monthly basis as you collect rent to look at your property. And also, we also need to make sure that we also have a demarcation in terms of a tenant versus landlord. There are some costs within the place where the tenant is staying, the unit that they have taken on your property. There are some tenant responsibilities, especially when the tenant has been with you for maybe a couple of years. We tend to find that some of the residential properties, what tends to happen is that once you stay there maybe 1.5 years, you know, some things you can repair yourself, you know, very minor repairs within the house. They tend to become a tenant, a responsibility versus a landlord responsibility. And also ensure that you also have demarcation of roles, especially with also service providers, especially when it comes to repair matters, so that everybody is clear on exactly what they need to do. And you as a landlord ensure that you maintain complete oversight and making sure that all the controls have been put in place and your money is really working for you. Because if you're paying them a small fee to continue managing your property, then you need to make sure that the responsibility is well taken up. And bringing us to our last pillar, I believe this is actually the key for me, if you ask me, which is communication. As the world continues to become very virtual, it also becomes very small. You can easily communicate to anyone, anywhere, in any part of the world. So for this, what we encourage landlords to do is that communication, ensure that it is formal and official. Avoid a lot of casualness and informal communication, which fosters a lot of ambiguity. And the ambiguity means that, now, it becomes a he said, she said, I thought they said they would do this, I thought they would do that, I thought, so you want to avoid that. So ensure that your communication with all your counterparties, and your counterparties here, I mean your tenant, your agent, and even your service providers is very formal and official. I know some of us, as landlords, what usually happens, especially for the ones in diaspora, you have a family member, maybe is the one who's doing for you the property management, and you may not be able to have a formal communication. But just the same way, we try to formalize that in some level of way, based on your judgment, to ensure that there's some level of official and formal communication. Because I am sure, even as a trusted family member or a trusted friend or a trusted person is looking after your property when you're not around, you are paying them something small. You're giving them some level of consideration. And so I believe that demands also the level of seriousness and even formal communication that it demands. So we do advise that you ensure that communication is formal and official. Ensure that communication, keep it proactive, keep it frequent, keep it very quality. Avoid a lot of, if it's a friend who is managing your property, you might get into a tendency of maybe now discussing other matters, how each other is doing, etc. So when you're discussing matters to do with your property and efficient management, ensure that it is quality communication, so that you ensure that integrity of that relationship, especially when it comes to managing your property, is maintained. And then if that level of discussion has ended about management of the property, then now you can move into the other, unofficial and sort of formal, casual discussions about other things. Ensure that it's very professional. Ensure that it's also very transparent. And then the other thing is that obviously this has really ensured that all of us, even if you never had an email address, you never used a lot of text messaging, and you only relied on face-to-face, that now there's a very enhanced use of emails and letters in terms of communication, especially to your tenants. Letters tend to be a very strong formal communication, even when you're relaying good news and bad news alike. So I believe that you need to be able to have to ensure that those systems are in place and you're communicating formally. And also text messaging, sometimes, it's just to ensure maybe you're giving, maybe you have reviewed your rent, for example. Maybe, you had tenants since 2010. They've been paying, like I've given the example, 20,000 per month. And then now times have changed. We're in 2020. So that's 10 years Now the market has moved slightly. So what that means that maybe now the rent, the place commands a rent of 25,000. So you want to communicate that. So you can have letters drafted and ensure that they are formally signed off and given to all the tenants, and then maybe send a text message, because you have all their contacts and you have their documentation. So what you do is that you just send a text message, just alerting them that there's a letter that they should be receiving, and if anybody has not received, then they should revert back, by this day and on this day. So that usually helps, and it's very proactive and it's very frequent, as I was saying before, and also demonstrates a level of professionalism and also a lot of transparency. And then also embrace sharing information freely. Property is very emotive. It's a very emotive investment in Kenya. So try and make sure that because of that, or rather around that emotive nature of property, try and make sure that, you're sharing information freely and transparently, because that also helps you know what's currently happening in your property. It's very efficiently managed, and also everybody is very clear on what they need to do. Ensure that information you're sharing is very realistic and it remains very practical and also very consistent. And you have to maintain that so that even the people that you have put in place to manage your property on your behalf also know that you require this report at this time, you require this at this time, and you require a response on this. So they actually ensure that they maintain that level of professionalism as well. And then also, as I was talking about the insurance premiums, when you have some level of emergency in a property, you need to, if something happens, if maybe a strike happens right outside your property, and maybe there's that's a very unsettling issue. Obviously, insurance premiums will help you, secure your property in terms of any damage. But also, do you have an emergency response where, do people know who to contact? If somebody falls from the balcony, if a child is injured, do people know who to contact, or is it people now to wonder, hey, what's going to happen? So you make sure that at least you have a good emergency response system, and you also have contact details which are very clearly demarcated. And what we usually see is that as you enter a property, you start to see some, maybe there's an internet service provider, maybe there is maybe water or the pay bill number to pay the rent. We usually see some of those announcements. So ensure that also you put your emergency response there, so that when chaos erupts in your property, you're not caught unawares, and there's also, and people on site know what to do, because you may not be there. And if you're, say, for example, like our clients in diaspora, the people on the ground know what to do, and then there's a plan, there's a protocol. If it's something of a very serious nature, maybe this person needs to be called, this person needs to be contacted, and then it goes through the food chain like that. So you need to make sure that that is very clear, and even the plans of that. A fire could break out, and then do people know how to evacuate the building? Do they know what to do? Do they know where to go? Do they know where to assemble? Sometimes we take these things for granted until something happens on the property, and then then now you realize, okay, my property is actually not very well managed as I thought, even if my tenants are paying rent. And those are some of the things that also keep your tenants secure, keep them safe, and also keep them in a state knowing that the landlord is very involved, and also ensure that while they may not be the face of the property, because sometimes you also, as a landlord, you also don't want to interact a lot with your tenants, you have this complete oversight and nothing is left to chance. And especially during this period, if, say, for example, in your property, somebody ends up contracting the virus, what happens? Is there some level of protocol? Before the Ministry of Health officials assemble, or an ambulance is called, do people have a procedure? Do they have a protocol? Does your property manager know what to do? Does your caretaker know what to do? Does the security guy know what to do? So while they may have other day jobs, but they also need to know what the emergency response system is, or if there is theft, if there's a burglary, or somebody is vandalizing their property, some of those things we take for granted, especially when nothing has happened. You know, they start to really you know, become very important when something happens. And I think with that, I believe at least we've gotten an overview of ideally how properties should be efficiently managed, and we encourage you to feel free to reach out to to us at Mortgage to ensure that, you know, we're engaging you, and also we can also help you see how you can put some of these systems in place and to ensure that your properties are well managed during this period. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hilda. Thank you, Hilda, for that insightful talk. Quite a number of questions are coming through, so we'll ask you to still hold on. We have a few questions which have come through. Dear listeners, we had promised to end this session at 4:30, but we'll kindly request that you give us 10 more minutes to respond to a few questions which have come through. And I think the message from Hilda, based on her presentation, is that it's no longer business as usual. And to thrive in this new normal requires the abnormal. And what we usually do will no longer be enough, as we need to go beyond the usual. The few questions that we need to ask ourselves, hard questions that as investors we need to ask ourselves, is what can landlords and rent collecting agents leverage on from the core bank's digital solutions? What is possible? What solutions can landlords and rent collecting agents engineer from access to core bank digital platforms? Based on what Hilda is saying, it is possible to earn good returns in real estate property, but it calls for us to do more than what we've always considered normal. Now, to this end, tune in tomorrow from 3 p.m. East African time for yet another interesting topic on digital rental collection solutions. You do not want to miss this. So, ladies and gentlemen, as we near the end of this session, there are a few questions which have come through from our viewers, both in the country and out. And I'll want to recognize some of which have come through, like Martin from Utawala, who's left a chat, a message on our chat. We also have a few inquiries which have come through the portal, like Pasweti. There's also Anonymous who's left a very interesting question. So I'll ask our three panelists, who are Purity Gashoki, Julian Onsando, and Hilda Njoroge, to take seats so that we can respond to these questions even as we wind up. And the first question, we'll want to throw it to Hilda because it is more or less related to what you were taking us through. And this is from Anonymous. He's not left the details. And the question to you, Hilda, is: does one have to continue paying land rates and rents while servicing a mortgage? You say they've acquired a property which they're renting out. What is the importance of continuing to pay the land rates and the rents? Hilda, please.
Thank you very much, Patrick, for that question. Thank you very much, Patrick, for that question. Yes, as a landlord, you need to make sure that even as you're servicing your mortgage, remember this is a loan that you've gotten from the bank. So it's basically somebody else who's financed your property, purchase rather. So at the end of the day, when it comes to responsibilities with regards to the property, it's important to make sure that your property taxes are paid and they're also paid on time. So yes, to answer your question, Patrick, to the person who would have been happy to get your name to also know where you're reaching us from. Yes, it is important for you to continue paying your property taxes. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Hilda. For the viewer, the listener who had not left a name, I think you're well answered. But in case of anything, feel free to reach out to us, and we'll be more than glad to assist you even more. Now, the next question, we'd be glad if Purity was to respond to this. This is Moniki from Donholm, and he's asking, would the bank consider rental income to repay a mortgage? Now, this is a client who had left a question on the property portal, so we are encouraged to also keep sending our questions. Purity, when you're ready.
Okay, thank you, our client from Donholm. The answer to that question is yes. The bank is open to consider rental income while taking up a mortgage. And it is important to note that the property whose rental income is coming from should be registered to your name so as to facilitate the processing of the mortgage. The answer to that is yes, it is possible.
Thank you, Purity. Moneki, feel free to reach through to us. And if you have any project you intend to undertake, we'll be more than glad to partner with you. Julian, there's a question here, and I presume this is from a client in the diaspora. The client is asking, does one have to be an existing bank customer to qualify for a mortgage with a bank? Julian, if you could take that one, please.
Thank you, Patrick, for that question. The client did not leave their name, but the answer to that question is that you do not have to have an existing account to qualify for a mortgage. Immediately that you express interest, we actually collect all the requirements that you need to provide to us, and at the same time, we'll open an account for you, and you'll start saving towards the installments, and also just send money towards the eventual loan repayments. So you do not need to have an account immediately. Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you, Julian. Our next question from a client who's left a chat on the property portal. We'll request that Hilda responds to this, and this is from Victor from Salt Lake City. And Victor is asking, what rental yield would you consider as a good return on investment for a property in Nairobi? Hilda, if you could take that, please.
Thank you, Victor. That's a very good question. Ideally, properties in Nairobi, there's no general yield per se. Yields basically depend on the type of property. If you have residential property is also demarcated, in terms of, we have affordable housing, or rather very low sort of rental yielding properties that could almost be social housing. And then we have the middle income segment, and then we have the upper end. So you'll notice a lot of the Kenyan demographic is within the middle income. So you'll find that a lot of properties that are very good yielding are within that space due to demand. And then the yields also vary. And then, we also have commercial property. Commercial property is varied as well. And we have office, we have retail, and we have industrial, and we have hospitality. So what that means for each of these sectors, we actually have different yields that we would consider as the yield for that property. So to answer your question, there is no specific yield for properties in Nairobi. What I would what would appreciate is to also get clarity on what specific property are you looking for in terms of yield. Feel free to just chat and just let us know, because would like to make sure that the yield that we are giving you, the range which we've seen currently in the market, is within the property within the property type that you're looking for or you actually own. Remember, as I said, yields are very varied. We have both residential and commercial properties, so obviously the yields would not be the same.
Thank you, Hilda. I hope the client is well answered. In the interest of time, I'll take the next two questions, but we promise to get back to you and your questions based on what you've posed to us. And the next question, we'll kindly request that Julian responds to this. And this is a question from Ryle of Nyali. And Ryle is asking, what are the mortgage requirements to start off a mortgage application process with the bank? Julian, please.
Okay. Thank you, Ryle, for that question. So some of the requirements that we need for us to start off a mortgage request would be, first, on your end, we will need to analyze your income. So we will need, if you're in employment, 6 months of your bank statement, 3 months of your pay stubs, and an employer letter to confirm or to verify your employment and the terms of your employment. Then when it comes to the property itself, we will need you to have the agreement that you have signed up together with the vendor that is selling the property to you. And apart from that, or if initially you cannot get a sale agreement, we will accept an offer letter signed by both yourself and the vendor, and also executed by a lawyer. Then we will need a copy of title of the property that you are purchasing, so that we are able to at least know the size and basically know whether the property can be charged. So it is important that the property has a title to it. And then we will also require other documents like your due diligence documents, which include an ID, your ID, and then KRA PIN is important because it will be used to register the property to yourself. And also, if you're a resident, say in the diaspora, we will require a document that shows that you're legally in that country, and that includes either a passport or maybe a permanent residence card. It depends now on which country you are and which status you are in terms of residency. So those are some of the important requirements that we will need to appraise, and in terms of your income, and also to know exactly who you are in terms of a person, and the property price that we get from now, the sale agreement that you'll provide to us. So those are some of the critical documents that we shall need to process. Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you, Julian. Ryan, we will also get back to you. We'll call you back just to take this discussion further to see how well we can work together. Now, the last question, basically, there's a client called Kanja, and Kanja was very straightforward because he was asking, where do I find properties to buy? And this is in line with what Purity had said. You can visit our portal and you'll get to see the various options we have available, from land to residential, as well as commercial properties. Now, with this, ladies and gentlemen, I would kindly request we end the session here. But I'm grateful that you've been able to join us. We are grateful that you've been able to spare your time to come listen to us and see what you have to share on matters property. It's been an engaging week. We've really had a good time responding to your questions, getting to share what we have about the properties, and also listening in to see how best we can partner. And just to mention, we have another session which will end this symposium tomorrow, where we'll be talking about the digital solutions for people who are in the real estate sector, as well as the old adage which has always been thrown around, which would be better to buy or to build a property. So we'll ask you to join in also, but we are most grateful that we've been able to find time to join us. And for those whom we've not been able to respond to queries, be sure we will get back to you. And the best we can do is to thank you for now for sparing time and engaging us on the various topics that we've had today. We promise we'll have more of this coming, and in days to come, we also look forward to a fruitful engagement. And with this, as it has been our tradition, we'll also call in our colleague Anne to end the session with a word of prayer. So Anne, when you're ready, you can lead us even as we end the session. Actually, Anne is trying to log in, so we'll have Purity lead us in a prayer even as we wind up. Purity, when you're ready.
Thank you, our listeners, for joining in. We started with a prayer. We thanked God for giving us this opportunity, and I would like us to bow down and end with a thanksgiving prayer. Let us pray. We thank you, dear Lord, for the gift of life. We even thank you for this opportunity you've given unto us to interact with our clients, to interact with everyone on the social platform. We pray that the things that we have learned today, that they are going to be fruitful, and we are going to have even more fruitful engagements in the days to come. We thank you, we honor you, and we even thank you because of the solutions that you're giving us, you're enabling us to give our customers, and we pray that they're going to be of benefit to them, their families, and even for generations to come. We praise you and we honor you, for in Jesus' name we pray, trust and believe. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Purity, and thank you everybody for tuning in. Enjoy the rest of the day.
The Good Hope Mortgage Property Hub is officially open. The Good Hope Mortgage Property Hub is officially open.